possible paradigm, alternative paradigm of life.
I'm so glad Rita Dove mentioned something other than the literature as a path that we draw from, the vessel that we use, that he mentioned Mahler and other art forms, because I do think that it's a very complicated and fluid thing that we're swimming through, I guess one could say, and it's not all literature. I have spent a lot of my adult life avoiding the very question of the past and tracing my legacy, not because I didn't want to know, but because I was tired of explaining it and tired of, shall we say, protesting who or what I was working out of. And the reason for that, I think, is because we often, I think when you are of when you're not of the mainstream, so much of what you do publicly in terms of talking about where your roots are comes out of reaction and protest and explanation and not assumption. So that, let me put that in terms of examples. If I were to say that I draw out of the marvelously rich musicality and irony of Langston Hughes, everyone would say, yes, of course. If I say that Goethe really influenced me, it's Goethe. And I'm tired of that look that people get in their eyes. But, and it often has to do with protection. It has to do, and that's what this prickly thing I thought was kind of interesting, because one does get prickly about it. One of the things that I remember from what my parents taught me more by example than actually saying it, was that you don't get bitter, because if you get bitter, you aren't thinking clearly out of your soul, and you've lost. So you don't get bitter. Well, how do you not get bitter if you get tired? And I love pacing, that's a tired poem, if you're a bison walking your way through, it's true, the grass, you never see it growing green behind you, your head is always down. And so I think that one of the things in the past that I keep pulling with me is that idea that just know who you are and don't get upset if someone thinks it's odd that you like Goethe. I share a birthday with Goethe. This is a serendipitous thing that when you're a child, you say, ooh, you look for all the famous people and you hope that you're going to see them. And it is part of your legacy, isn't it? I mean, if you're on my husband shared the birthday with Charlie Chaplin, and I think it's influencing. But it's that attitude, you as a newly formed being, still trying to figure out how language works, which is our human need of expression, how that works with all of these things that you can't articulate. What you do is you keep bouncing things off. You try on different hats. You try on different vessels. You pour things in it. Until you find things that fit you more and more, until hopefully someday it's you. And in my life, it is as much the voices of my aunts in the kitchen as it is Lady Macbeth, as it is John Coltrane, but actually more than John Coltrane, it's string quartets, because I played the cello, and when I was playing the cello, I thought, this sounds like jazz. Because even though the music is written down, there's a lot of room to play in every measure. And I began to understand the modern jazz quartet by playing string quartets in a classical setting. I say all of that, and I don't know how that all plays out in the work, except that I want to believe, and I actually do believe, that I prefer to draw from the past more than break from the past. The breaking, I think, tends to happen only when the world's assumptions about what one's path can be, make one want to declare something. And one reason why I often, people ask me, what are your influences? I get her all around that question. I say no, because I don't want anyone to latch onto one thing and say, oh, yes, that's very clear. And also because it's a lie. I don't really know what all of my influences are. The ones that are influencing the most, I don't know. I'll throw out ones which will confuse you, perhaps because you might assume that that's who I am. I don't even know who I am or what I'm doing in terms of the work, except that I do know that music is extremely important to my work, and not in that conventional sense of just making a line of things. It's something in the way that our very breath is engaged in the making of music, and also the way that music is something that words can never do. And I also believe that words in the end aspire towards speechlessness. In the end we aspire towards something that can't be said. I do know that I'm trying to think. Well, here's another one. James Brown. Why James Brown? It has to do with showmanship, which shows incredible vulnerability deep down inside. I mean, the cake that comes on every time, and maybe it brings out the cake. Stylizes an anguish which is actually in each of us, and therefore we can laugh at it, and we can feel it. And then you also keep that beat just pounding, until you say, okay, we've heard, enough of that. But we start to get his measure. We start to take his breath. We slow down or speed up to meet him. And then we are in his language, whatever that is. I think I'll leave it at that.
When I first read On Assignment, I felt I couldn't